The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was a marvel of engineering and symbolism, a testament to centuries of uneasy peace among the stars. Its dome stretched impossibly high, an intricate mosaic of shifting lights representing every known star system. Yet for Captain Marcus Trent, Earth's representative, it felt suffocating. He stood at the circular podium reserved for minor species, his posture straight but his jaw tight. Around him, beings of incomprehensible forms and intellect murmured in their strange languages, many directing dismissive glances his way. Humanity, after all, was a newcomer, barely a footnote in the galactic order. "Let us address the final matter on today's agenda," boomed a voice from the central dais. It belonged to Counselor Vareth, a towering, multi-limbed elder of the Zarquin species. His obsidian exoskeleton glinted under the hall's ambient light, and his voice carried the weight of millennia. The matter of human territorial encroachments into Zarquin claimed space. Marcus didn't flinch, though he felt the collective gaze of the council shift toward him. He'd prepared for this moment, studied every diplomatic angle, but the hostility in the air was palpable. The Zarquin were not merely powerful. They were arrogant, convinced of their evolutionary superiority. For years, they had treated humanity as an upstart species unworthy of the stars. Keeltar, the Zarquin ambassador, rose from his seat with deliberate menace. He was shorter than Vareth, but no less imposing, his sharp mandibles clicking as he spoke. "Captain Trent," he said, his voice a grating symphony of contempt, "your species has repeatedly ignored warnings to vacate the systems surrounding the Vaxel Nebula. Such insolence cannot go unanswered." Marcus took a measured breath before replying, his voice calm but firm. "Ambassador Keeltar, the systems in question are uninhabited and lie within neutral space as per the Concord's charter. Humanity has adhered to every stipulation." "You twist words like a desperate hatchling," Keeltar interrupted, his mandibles snapping. "Your kind's presence in those systems threatens our strategic interests. It is an act of provocation." The murmur in the chamber grew louder. Marcus felt the weight of the moment, the precarious balance between diplomacy and outright conflict. He met Keeltar's gaze, unyielding. If conducting scientific surveys in unclaimed space is provocation, then I fail to see how the Zarquin claim to be stewards of peace. The council stirred at the veiled challenge. Keeltar's mandibles flared, a clear sign of anger. "Enough," he hissed. "The time for words is over. Zarquin forces will remove your presence from those systems, by force if necessary." The declaration hung in the air like a thunderclap. Marcus tightened his fists at his sides, his mind racing. This was no longer about territorial disputes. The Zarquin were making an example of humanity, attempting to cement their dominance by undermining Earth's hard-won progress among the stars. "I strongly advise against such action," Marcus said, his voice edged with steel. "Earth does not seek conflict, but we will defend ourselves if provoked." The ambassador laughed, a chittering, mocking sound that reverberated through the chamber. "Defend yourselves? Your species crawled out of its gravity well less than a century ago. You are insects playing at gods. We will crush you." Before Marcus could respond, the chamber's central display came to life, projecting a live feed from the Vaxel Nebula. It showed a human space station, a small but vital outpost encircled by Zarquin warships. The tension in the hall erupted into chaos as the feed flickered, showing the station's destruction in real time. Explosions tore through its structure, and debris scattered into the void. The murmurs ceased. Silence reigned, heavy and oppressive. Marcus's chest burned with restrained fury, but he refused to let it show. He straightened his shoulders and fixed Keeltar with a stare that could cut through steel. "Congratulations," he said, his voice steady but ice-cold. "You just declared war on the incorrect species." Keeltar tilted his head, his mandibles twitching in amusement. "Bold words, human. Let us see if your actions match them." As the Zarquin delegation departed, Marcus turned to his aide, Lieutenant Andrew Hale, who had been watching the exchange in tense silence. Send a priority transmission to Fleet Command, Marcus ordered. Inform them the Zarquin have attacked and destroyed civilian assets. Initiate protocol resolute. Hale nodded and hurried away, his expression grim. Marcus remained rooted to the spot, his mind already calculating the next move. Humanity had prepared for this possibility, though no one had hoped it would come to this. The Zarquin thought Earth was defenseless, a fragile world clinging to borrowed technology. They had no idea what was coming. Back aboard the human flagship HSS Aegis, Admiral Jason Ward received the transmission with a stony expression. He'd spent years preparing Earth's hidden fleet, a force forged in secrecy and desperation. Now, the moment had arrived. Begin mobilization, he commanded, his voice unwavering. The Zarquin think they've won. Let's show them how wrong they are. As the human fleet came alive, engines roaring and weapon systems powering up, Marcus Trent stood alone in the Great Hall, staring at the empty space where the Zarquin delegation had been. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. They saw fragility where there was strength, disunity where there was resolve. Let them come, Marcus muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of the chamber systems. We'll show them what humanity is capable of, and with that, the wheels of war began to turn. The void was silent, but humanity's vengeance moved through it with an energy that felt alive. Hidden among the shadows of a distant asteroid belt, the HSS Resolute, a sleek and lethal battleship, waited in perfect stillness. On its bridge, Commander Ethan Cole studied the holographic display in front of him, his expression cold and unreadable. The Zarquin fleet was just beyond sensor range, patrolling the Vaxel Nebula as if they had nothing to fear. Cole knew better. Status report, he said, his voice low but steady, a contrast to the tension humming beneath the surface. Fleet is in position, replied Lieutenant Harris, his tactical officer. All ships reporting optimal readiness. The stealth systems are holding. Zarquin scanners haven't picked us up. Cole nodded, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the enemy positions. The Zarquin believed humanity lacked the strength to retaliate, that the destruction of a single station would be met with cries of protest and nothing more. They had no idea that Earth had been preparing for this day for decades, crafting weapons and warships in secret, biding their time for the moment when the galaxy would push too far. Mark the targets, Cole said, folding his arms behind his back. Let's remind them who they're dealing with. On the holographic map, glowing markers appeared over the Zarquin's forward outposts and key ships. Their fleet was formidable, dozens of heavy warships, bristling with firepower. But they had grown complacent, and their defenses were designed for conventional warfare. Humanity would not fight by their rules. All ships, prepare to engage, Cole ordered, his voice calm but firm. This isn't just about winning a battle. This is about sending a message. A chorus of acknowledgments came through the comms. The fleet moved with precision, humanity's finest captains guiding their ships into position. The Resolute led the charge, its engines humming as it glided silently toward the Zarquin formation. Cole watched the countdown on his display, each second ticking by with unbearable slowness. He felt the weight of the moment, the lives under his command, the responsibility to prove that humanity would not be cowed. On my mark, he said. 3, 2, 1. Fire. The void exploded with light as the first salvo tore through the darkness. Humanity's advanced weaponry, honed in secrecy and desperation, struck with surgical precision. Zarquin ships shuddered under the assault, their shields buckling and collapsing as plasma torpedoes and railgun rounds found their targets. The enemy fleet scrambled to respond, but humanity's stealth systems had left them blind. Enemy destroyer neutralized, Harris reported, his voice tight with focus. They're trying to regroup. Not fast enough, Cole replied. Keep the pressure on. Focus fire on their command vessels. Cut the head off the snake. Across the Zarquin fleet, chaos reigned. Their officers barked frantic orders, trying to identify where the attacks were coming from. But humanity's tactics were unlike anything they had faced before. Strike fast, hit hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. The Resolute weaved through the fray, its weapons firing in controlled bursts. Cole's crew worked like a well-oiled machine, every officer and technician anticipating his commands before he gave them. He felt a grim satisfaction as another Zarquin cruiser detonated in the distance, its hull splitting apart like a fragile shell. But the Zarquin were nothing if not resilient. As the element of surprise began to fade, their fleet started to organize, turning their weapons toward humanity's ships. Enemy reinforcements inbound, Harris warned. Looks like a full battle group. Cole clenched his jaw. He had anticipated this. The Zarquin never fought alone. They had the numbers, the resources, the experience. But humanity had something they didn't. Adaptability. Bring us about, Cole ordered. Target their reinforcements. Let's show them what Earth's engineers can do. The Resolute surged forward, its railguns firing in rapid succession. Around it, humanity's fleet moved with precision, forming a defensive perimeter to counter the Zarquin reinforcements. The battle was brutal, the void alight with fire and destruction. On the Zarquin flagship, Admiral Zyrek watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. The humans were supposed to be weak, scattered, insignificant. Yet here they were, tearing through his forces with technology that should have been decades behind. Order all ships to focus fire on their lead vessel, Zyrek commanded, his voice sharp. I want that ship destroyed. Back on the Resolute, alarms blared as enemy fire raked across the ship's shields. Cole gripped the edge of his console, his mind racing. The Zarquin were adapting faster than expected. He needed to end this before they could regain the upper hand. Harris, status on the experimental payload, he asked. Ready to deploy, Harris replied, glancing at him with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Cole nodded. Do it. Target their flagship. The Resolute launched a single missile, its surface gleaming with a faint blue light. The weapon was humanity's trump card, a kinetic warhead powered by experimental gravitic technology. It streaked toward the Zarquin flagship with terrifying speed, bypassing their defenses as if they weren't there. The resulting explosion was blinding, a supernova of energy that ripped through the flagship and several nearby vessels. When the light faded, the void was filled with debris, the shattered remains of the Zarquin command. A stunned silence fell over the battlefield. The surviving Zarquin ships hesitated, their formation broken. Send the signal, Cole said, his voice cold. Let them know we're not here to negotiate. Harris transmitted the message to the remaining Zarquin forces. Withdraw or be annihilated. One by one, the Zarquin ships began to retreat, their confidence shattered. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. As the Resolute drifted among the wreckage, Cole allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had won the day, but he knew the Zarquin would return, stronger and angrier than ever. Admiral Ward will want a full report, Harris said quietly. Cole nodded. He'll get it, and then we'll be ready for whatever comes next. The stars outside the viewport seemed colder, sharper, as if reflecting the harsh reality of the conflict ahead. Humanity had made its stand, but the cost of survival was always high. The war reached its crescendo above the Zarquin homeworld, a planet shrouded in the dark amber glow of its polluted atmosphere. The Human Alliance fleet, led by Admiral Jason Ward aboard the HSS Vanguard, emerged from hyperspace like a storm of vengeance. Hundreds of ships, each bristling with weaponry and precision, formed an intricate lattice of power. The Zarquin, though weakened, had marshaled their remaining forces, a vast defensive armada orbiting their capital world, their desperation visible in the density of their formations. Admiral Ward stood on the Vanguard's bridge, his presence commanding. His scarred face bore the weight of every battle fought in humanity's history, but his gray eyes burned with quiet resolve. Around him, the crew moved with disciplined urgency, their voices steady despite the gravity of the moment. Enemy fleet within range, called Commander Alvarez, his tone clipped. They're holding position, sir. likely waiting for us to make the first move. Ward stared at the holographic display, which rendered the battlefield in glowing blues and reds. The Zarquin fleet looked formidable, a vast array of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and carriers. But he knew appearances could be deceiving. Humanity's victories had bled them dry. "They want us to come to them," Ward said, almost to himself. "They think they can break us with sheer numbers." "Orders, Admiral?" Alvarez prompted. Ward's lips curved into a faint smile, one that carried no warmth. "We won't give them the satisfaction. Begin Phase 1. Deploy the decoy units and prepare the strike teams. Let's show them why humanity thrives where others falter." On his command, several smaller ships broke away from the human formation, broadcasting false signals to mimic critical assets. The Zarquin predictably responded, sending clusters of their forces to intercept the decoys. But as they moved, their tight formation began to unravel, gaps forming in their defenses. "Phase 2, Ward said, his voice calm but edged with iron. Stealth frigates, invisible to Zarquin sensors, darted through the openings in their lines. These ships carried elite strike teams, soldiers trained in environments harsher than any alien battlefield. Among them was Captain Marcus Trent, who had personally volunteered for the operation. Inside the cramped hull of the HSS Revenant, Trent checked his gear one last time. His armor, blackened to absorb light, was a marvel of human engineering, outfitted with adaptive camouflage and enhanced mobility. Around him, his squad of 6 men prepared in silence, their faces grim but determined. "Final briefing," Trent said, his voice steady despite the storm ahead. "Our target is the primary command hub. Intel says it's buried deep in the central spire of the Zarquin capital. If we take it out, their entire fleet loses coordination. That's our job." "Understood." The squad nodded, no words needed. They were soldiers forged in fire, men who had survived the worst the galaxy had to offer. As the Revenant glided into position, the ship's pilot signaled the countdown. Insertion in 5-4. Trent gripped the handhold above him, his mind focused. The world narrowed to the task ahead. When the drop bay opened, they launched into the chaos of the battle below. The spire loomed ahead, a jagged monument of alien architecture, its surface crawling with Zarquin defenders. Trent's squad landed with pinpoint accuracy, their thrusters slowing their descent at the last second. "Move!" Trent barked, leading the charge. Blaster fire erupted as Zarquin warriors swarmed to intercept them. The enemy fought with ferocity, but humanity's soldiers fought with something deeper, a drive born of survival, of refusing to be extinguished. Trent's rifle barked in quick bursts, each shot precise. His squad moved as one, advancing with ruthless efficiency. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Vanguard unleashed the full might of humanity's fleet. Railguns fired in synchronized salvos, plasma torpedoes streaked through the void, and AI-guided drones harried the Zarquin ships. The enemy fought valiantly, their dreadnoughts trading blow for blow with Earth's battleships. But the cracks in their resolve began to show. Enemy carriers neutralized, Alvarez reported. Their fighter squadrons are breaking off. Ward didn't celebrate. He knew the battle wasn't won until the ground team succeeded. Maintain pressure. Keep them focused on us. On the planet's surface, Trent and his team pushed deeper into the spire. The corridors were narrow and stifling, filled with the sharp chittering of Zarquin guards coordinating their defense. The air was thick with the acrid tang of alien blood and scorched metal. "Captain, we're reaching the command center," one of his men said. "Scans show heavy resistance ahead." Trent paused at a corner, his breathing steady despite the exertion. "We don't stop now. Use grenades to clear the bottleneck. Then follow my lead." The squad advanced, their movements a deadly ballet. Explosions rocked the spire as they breached the final chamber. Inside, the Zarquin command staff scrambled to respond, their clawed hands darting across glowing consoles. Trent wasted no time. He opened fire, his shots cutting down the nearest officers. His squad followed, clearing the room with brutal precision. Within moments, the command center was theirs. "Plant the charges," Trent ordered, as his men worked. The room's largest console emitted a sudden burst of static. The image of Zarquin Admiral Zyrek appeared, his mandibles trembling with rage. "You think this will save you, human?" Zyrek snarled. "You are but dust beneath our feet." Trent stepped forward, his rifle aimed directly at the hologram. "Dust doesn't destroy fleets, Admiral, and it doesn't topple empires." Without waiting for a reply, he fired, the hologram shattering into sparks. "Charges set," his demolitions expert called. "Fall back," Trent commanded. The squad extracted just as the charges detonated. The spire crumbled, the explosion rippling through the Zarquin defenses. Across the planet, their forces faltered, their coordination shattered. In orbit, Ward watched as the Zarquin fleet began to retreat, their formations breaking apart. "They're done," Alvarez said quietly. Ward nodded, his expression unreadable. "Signal the fleet. Pursue only to ensure they don't regroup." "We've made our point." The human fleet reassembled, their ships battered but victorious. For the first time, the galaxy would look upon Earth not as an insignificant speck, but as a force to be reckoned with. As Trent and his team returned to the Vanguard, Ward met him on the hangar deck. Their eyes met, and no words were needed. They had done what many thought impossible. Humanity had triumphed, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to kneel.